Uh, Hello friends. In this lecture we'll be continuing with the light sensor again. In previous lecture we have seen the photodiodes and phototransistors, how they are manufactured and how they can be used as a sensor for detecting the light. So today we'll be continuing the same light detectors with few more sensors of different principles. So photoresistors is the next sensor which works on the principle that whenever the light falls on a particular sensor, its resistance changes. So this is what the simple principle used in photoresistors. So the photodiode and phototransistor are photoconductive type of devices, and the most of the common material that is used for fabrication are cadmium sulfide and cadmium selenide, which is a semiconductor whose resistance changes upon the light entering on the surface. Then its operation of a photoresistor requires a source, power source, because this is an active type of, it requires a power source because it does not generate any photo current. So the photo effect causes the change in material's electrical resistance. So that electrical resistance will cause the drop across the resistance, and that is going to change the output, and that output will be proportional to the change in resistance, and that change in resistance is proportional to the light. So this is what the cadmium sulfide is used. So you can see that the two electrodes are there and the material is cadmium sulfide, and to these two electrodes you are applying the battery, and when the light falls on this cadmium sulfide material, then the current flowing through the circuit will change because the resistance is changing, and we know that V is equal to I into R. So if R is changing, obviously I will change because V is constant. So this is what the principle used in this photoresistor. So the structure is look like this one, that is a serpentine type of structure is kept, and you will see that here it is a photoconductive resistor which is sintered on which is made up of cadmium sulfide, and the electrode layer is there. So that electrode layer will have the two leads, and between these two leads you are going to measure the resistance. So this is what your photoresistors look like, depending on the cross sectional area is varied. So this is the smaller one, this is the larger one, and this is the larger than that. So these are the small photoresistors that you might have seen across in many applications. So that can be used for measurement of light, and you can see that this is a serpentine type of structure is there, and that is going to which is made up of a photoconductive material which will change its resistance. So in darkness the resistance of the material is very high, so it is in terms of mega ohms. So hence the voltage applied in a small dark current which is attributed to the temperature effect. So when the light incident on that one, the current IP will flow. That means whenever you are applying a voltage V, a very small current will flow, and that current flow will be because of the temperature attributes. So overall resistance when it is in dark, the resistance is very high, so the current is very low, and when the light is incident on the surface of such kind of photoresistors, then the current IP will flow, and that IP will be proportional to the change in resistance, and that change in resistance is proportional to the light intensity. So in darkness the electrons and holes in each level are almost crammed in a place in a crystal. So we know that the conduction band and valence band is there, so electrons are almost in a valence band, and when the light falls on that one, the electrons goes into conduction band. So the electrons are freely moved. Since the electrons are freely moving, that means it causes the current to flow, that means there is a decrease in resistance. So the resistance in conduction band is low as compared to resistance in valence band. So resistance in valence band is high. So when the light illuminates the conductive crystal material, the photons absorbs, and as a result that it added up the energy in the valence band electrons, and that will move to the conduction band, and they will create a free holes in the valence band, increasing the conductivity of the material. Increasing the conductivity of the material means resistance decreases. So for a cadmium sulfide type of material, the band gap means the gap between the valence band and the conduction band is 2.41 electron volt, and the absorption age wavelength is near about 515 nanometer. So which is in the visible spectral range. Hence the cadmium sulfide detects the light shorter than 515 nanometers wavelength. That means a normal sunlight or normal tube light is also detected by such kind of photoresistors. So cadmium sulfide is the most sensitive shorter wavelength at the shorter wavelength, whereas the silicon and germanium, these are the semiconductors that also shows such kind of sensitivity, but they are more efficient in the range of near infrared. So to achieve the better sensitivity, the sensor is fabricated in serpentine shape, where the electrodes are connected to the leads. Depending on the manufacturing process, the photoresistive cells can be divided into sintered type and single crystal type and and evaporated value. Okay. Then the sintered type of sensors will offer high sensitivity and easier fabrication for the larger sensitive areas. So the cadmium sulfide cells consist, how it is manufactured, you can see that the following steps are followed. First, highly pure cadmium sulfide powder is mixed with appropriate impurities and fusing agent. Then it is the mixture is dissolved into water. The solution in the form of paste is applied on the surface of ceramic substrate and allowed to dry. So the ceramic sub-assemblies are sintered in a high temperature oven to form a multicrystalline structure. At this stage, the photoconductive layer is formed. So the electrode layers or the leads are attached to this ceramic sintered type of material, and you will get the sensor is packed into a plastic material and the metal housing with or without window. So this is how you can manufacture the photoresistor. So here you can see that when the light falls on the characteristics are shown over here. So when the light falls on the surface, the resistance goes on increasing. That means when you move from darkness to sunlight, you can see that the resistance will decrease from a few kilo ohms to ohms. Okay, this is what the photoresistor properties we can see, and this is what the example where we can see that we will be getting the output voltage. So when you move the light towards this LDR, when it is far away, the intensity will be less, but when you move it towards, you can see that the voltage is decreasing. The voltage is decreasing means the resistance across this LDR is decreasing. So resistance is decreasing, hence the voltage is also decreasing. And when you move away from this one, you can see that the resistance is increasing, and that increasing resistance is also caused to increase the voltage across this LDR. So this is this photoresistor is also known as LDR, that is called as a light dependent resistor. So light dependent resistor is known as photoresistor also. So these are the examples, and these are the characters. This is the characteristics of the photoresistor. Okay. Now these are the applications of photoresistors. So you can use it for automatic light switch, which will turn on when the illumination drops. So the best example is you can use it for automatic lights that will be turned on in the dark. That means in the evening, when you have to set that voltage, you have to set that threshold. As soon as that threshold is achieved, you can switch on the circuit and you can make the lights on in your room or in your corridor or in your passage and on the streets also. So you can save the light, you can save the switching, or you can save the manpower also. So as soon as it's a morning session, the light will automatically get shut off also. That is also quite possible. So automatic light on and off is possible with such kind of photoresistance application. So here it is the circuit which will turn on and off the AC device accordingly. Then there is a beacon with a free running multi-vibrator which is enabled in a darkness, and when the resistance of the photoresistors becomes high, that will run the multi-vibrator beacon. So here it is that beacon is nothing but it is a light indicator. So whenever there is a light is there or whenever there is a darkness is there, so these concepts are generally used in lighthouses near seashore, or these type of concepts are generally used at high towers where you want to put a light which will be an indicator for the aeroplanes that there is a tower and there is a danger, so you should keep your height accordingly. So that will show you the lighthouses and such kind of beacons are used, and you can use such kind of applications over there. Then there is a application here, you can see that whenever there a light falls on that one, so you can find out the LED is on, so you can make the switch on when the light is on, when the light falls on a LDR, and you can make the switch off also when the light falls on LDR. That both the combinations are possible. So if you put the LDR in upper circuit, that means collector to base, then in that case it will be turned on, and if you put the LDR in low one, that is base to emitter, then in that case this LED will turn off. So you just try it, you just build this kind of circuit in any simulation circuit and you just try it. You will come to know that how the value is changing and how the circuit works. Okay. So next one is the thermal detectors. So we are going for the thermal detectors. So thermal detectors, there are different types of thermal detectors are there. So thermopile we are going to see. What do you mean by thermopile? So we know that we have seen that the light has two ranges. First one is ultraviolet to mid infrared and mid infrared to far infrared. So in that case, when you go for a far infrared, you have to use these thermal detectors type of sensors for light detection. So thermal infrared detectors are generally used for detecting the infrared radiations in the range of mid to far infrared spectral and non-contact temperature. Why it is non-contact? Because the temperature is very high. So you have to use non-contact type of. A typical infrared non-contact temperature sensors consist of following elements. So a sensing element, it consists of sensing element which is responsive to the electromagnetic radiation. Then a supporting structure to hold the sensing element. Then a housing means that sensing element and that supporting structure is put under certain metal or certain case. That case we will call it as a housing, which protects the sensing element from the environment, and a protective window. So protective window that may be a simple glass or that may be another type of hard material which will simply pass the wavelength of the light to the sensing element. So this is how the four elements you are putting in, and you will have this non-contact type of temperature sensor. So the thermopile, it is generally it is also called as a PIR detector. So thermopile belongs to the PIR class, and it is an operating principle as a thermocouple only. So we are going to see what kind of thermocouple. Thermocouple means when the two dissimilar metals are connected together and they are kept at different temperatures, you will get an the voltage is generated, and that effect is called as a thermocouple. So thermocouple is nothing but two dissimilar metals connected together. So that is a device called as a thermocouple. So it works on a principle of thermocouple. Then thermopile is serially connected thermocouples and invented to increase the output signal thermoelectric sensor. That means thermocouples are connected in series, that will form a thermopile. So thermopiles have a prime application in the thermal detection of a light which is in the range of mid to infrared range. Then the thermopile sensor consists of a frame having a relatively large thermal mass, which is the place where the cold junctions are positioned. So cold junctions, in a sense, the temperature or the reference temperature is considered as a cold temperature, and the other sensor or the other end of the thermocouple is kept at the temperature of the object. So the reference temperature, you will consider it as a cold junction. So the frame may be thermally coupled and the reference with a reference temperature sensor and attached to the thermostat having a known temperature. So the base support of the thin membrane, whose thermal capacity and thermal conductivity are small, so that can be used for the thermopiles. So here it is the example of thermopile. So thermopile sensors are generally manufactured like this. So you can see that here it is, the thermal radiation is there, thermal radiation which will be given to this window, and below that window there is a material which is made of two materials. So here you can see that here you will get, here it is one material and here it is another material. So here it is the junction. So this is one hot junction and this is cold junction. So the cold junction is at one reference temperature and the hot junction is exposed to this thermal radiation. So this is how you will be getting the combination of hot and cold junctions connected together. So that will form a thermopile, and it is pasted on the membrane, and the two terminals you are taking it out, and that will measure the change in thermal activity. So that change in thermal activity is nothing but it is proportional to the change in your thermal radiation. So infrared light is absorbed by the emanated from the membrane and changes its temperature. So the membrane carries the two types of junction, hot junction and cold junction. The membrane temperature rise depends upon the thermal capacity and the thermal conductivity and the intensity of infrared light. So thermopile sensors are best performance is characterized by its high sensitivity and low noise. Then it is achieved by the junctions material having high thermoelectric coefficient alpha, low thermal conductivity and the low volume resistivity. So these are the characteristics we are supposed to achieve. What are that? High thermal electricity coefficient, low thermal conductivity and low volume resistivity. So the junction pair should have a thermoelectric coefficient of opposite signs. That means one should generate a positive and other should generate a negative. Then and then only we will be able to get this kind of temperature change effect, which is proportional to the voltage, and that voltage is proportional to temperature, and that temperature is proportional to the thermal radiation. So this is how you will be getting. So the thermopile is a DC device whose output voltage follows its hot junction temperature quite well. So thermopile is modeled as a thermal flux controlled voltage source which is connected in series with a fixed resistor. So the thermal sensor is hermetically sealed in a metal can, which is hard infrared transparent window. So that metal can have a hard infrared transparent window. So that window will capture this light, and this light will fall on the your sensitive element, and that sensitive element will convert that heat absorbed by that light, and that light will be converted into temperature change. Temperature change will be converted into voltage, and that voltage will be proportional to temperature change, and temperature change is proportional to the light intensity. So this is how you will be getting. So I can say that the output voltage Vs is nearly proportional to the incident radiation. So the thermopile operating frequency limit is mainly determined by the thermal capacity and the thermal conductivity of the membrane. So it depends upon the material capacity and the thermal conductivity of the membrane. So output signal of the thermopile depends upon the temperature gradient of the source and the thermal radiation and the sensing surface. So what is the gradient? Gradient means change. So what change is there? That means on surface it is the one temperature is there, and at below surface there is another temperature. So that gradient you need to identify. So output signal depends on that. So the electrical resistivity material that example is bismuth and antimony, possess the thermoelectric coefficient, high thermoelectric coefficient, and and they have prime selection for the designing thermopile. Okay, so bismuth and antimony are being replaced by the silicon thermopiles nowadays. The advantage of using silicon type of thermopile sensor is that it is a possibility of employing a standard integrated circuit. That means you can integrate it in ICs, and that ICs can be used for detecting the light in the form of thermal detection. So the resistivity and the thermoelectric coefficient can be adjusted by doping concentration. So if the doping is changed, obviously the resistivity and the thermoelectric coefficient will change. So this is what the principle used over here. So this is how you are manufacturing the thermopile sensor in the form of MEMS. So that is micro machining technology, that is mechanical micro sensors are there. So these micro sensors are generally manufactured in the format of ICs, and these ICs are used nowadays with a membrane of SiO2 and Si3 and 4 on the top, which is have a low thermal capability or the conductivity. So onto this membrane thin conductors of two different thermoelectric material, that is polysilicon and aluminiums, are deposited. So here you can see that the central part is of absorber. So this is the absorber. You can see that the central part is of absorber, and here is the reference sensor you are using. So this reference sensor is for you may call it as a cold junction. Okay, you may call it as a cold junction, and this is the actual temperature you are measuring. So this temperature is exposed to the thermal radiation, and that thermal radiation will sense this one, and whatever may be the output change is there, that output change is proportional to this temperature difference, and that temperature difference will cause the it depends upon the your thermal radiation. So now the thermal detectors are there, that is also called as a active far infrared sensors are there. So active far infrared sensor process of measuring the thermal infrared flux is different from previously described PIR sensors. So for active infrared, that is AFIR sensors are different, its processing is different from PIR sensors. So PIR means proximity infrared sensors. So these proximity infrared sensors are generally used in you might have seen the automated flush taps or automated taps in toilets or in any multinational companies or any five-star hotels. So these automatic taps are just like it works on a principle of PIR. So in PIR sensing element whose temperature depends upon the both the ambient and the object temperature, whereas in AFIR sensor surface is actively controlled by special circuit having defined temperature TS, which in most of the application is maintained constant and the entire during the entire measurement process. So you are keeping the surface at a constant temperature TS. So this is what the in PIR sensor the difference is you are measuring the ambient temperature and object temperature, whereas in FIR you are trying to maintain the temperature constant. So this surface temperature you are trying to maintain it constant. So to control the surface temperature you will require a power P to control it. That means you require an excitation circuit. So to regulate this TS, the circuit measures the element surface temperature and compares with the internal reference, and incoming power contains TS higher than ambient temperature. So we'll see it in next one. The diagram is there, you can see that. So the part of the heat loss is in the form of thermal conduction. It is just like an thermal convection, and another is thermal radiation. So we know that when the object is there, so there is three types of losses are there: thermal conduction, thermal convection, and thermal radiation is there. So what we are supposed to measure in this thermal light detectors is the thermal radiation. So that is the third part we are supposed to measure. So unlike the conductive and convection heat transfer which is always directed out from the sensing element, the radiative heat, it may be in either direction. That means it may go out or it may be absorbed inside the sensor or object itself. So the net temperature flow or the thermal flow is conductive plus convective plus radiative type of, and it must be always come out of the sensor. So it must have a negative sign. So for AFIR element is provided with a cooling element because you need to maintain the temperature. So if the temperature goes about a particular temperature, you need to cool it down so as to maintain the TS below the ambient temperature. So here it is the example of that one, how this circuit looks like. So here it is the ambient temperature you are looking for, then here it is the object temperature you are measuring it for, then it will have a thermal flux towards this sensor. This is the thermal IR absorber is there, the first, this is the dark line, you can see that this is nothing but an IR absorber. Then the below that IR absorber there is a thermal temperature sensor, and below that there is a heater, and which is controlled by this control circuit. So if this temperature goes beyond below this or above this, then you have to heat or you have to cool down that temperature so that the temperature TS must be kept at a constant. So whatever may be the changes occurs, that changes occurs because of this phi, and this phi will cause the change in temperature, and that change in temperature is proportional to this one because you have maintained this temperature constant. And whatever may be the temperature gradient is there or temperature change is there, that change is proportional to this infrared radiation. Okay, so this is how the general principle is used. Okay, so during the operation the electric power dissipated by the heating element is the function of V about that resistance. Then AFIR sensor is active one. Why it is an active one? Because you are applying the external excitation, that's why it is active one, and can generate the signal only when it works in concert with the control circuit. So the control circuit must include the following essential component: uh, preset temperature reference, then error amplifier and driver stage. So it may include the RC network for corresponding loop response function for stabilizing the operation, and the AFIR sensor along with its control circuit is direct converter of the thermal radiative power into electrical voltage. So whatever may be the change in the output voltage, that we have seen that the output voltage we have taken across and that is fed back to control circuit. That output voltage is directly proportional to the change in temperature, and that change in temperature is because of change in radiative power. Okay, so the next, so okay, so with that we came to the end of the light detection. So in light detection we have seen the different types of light sensors. First one is the photodiode, then phototransistor, then photoresistor. The photoresistor also we know it as a LDR. Then thermal. In thermal also we have seen the two types of first one is the thermopile and second one is related to that one, and the next one is the gas flame type of detector. Okay, so this is how we can measure the light, or we can sense the light with the help of such kind of sensors. So thank you very much for patience listening. Thank you very much.